Chapter 5, The Way of Renunciation. So, you've learned, Chapter 1, that Arjuna asked Krishna to take him into the central position, the central pathway between the two opposing forces, symbolic of the two polarities, positive and negative. And he says, take me to the central position in the middle of the two forces. In the second chapter, Krishna delivers wisdom to help Arjuna overcome the sorrow and grief, to help stabilize this energy. But mere wisdom is not enough. This mere contemplation is not enough. He has to purify himself. So, the advice he gives in Chapter 3, the advice of action. To act in the world. Now, through doing this, you'll purify your own heart in the process. And this leads to Chapter 4 of knowledge. The knowledge that is gained is the knowledge of Brahman, the knowledge of the pure heart of consciousness that resides within all beings. And it's this highest good that leads one in the path of liberation. So in Chapter 5, Krishna has some clarity. He's understanding that the pathway of action is supreme. And that what is about to be done is inevitable. Destiny. But he still sees an enemy out there. He still sees two opposing forces, and he actually sees two yogas that Krishna is being taught. And this is where in Chapter 5, he's saying it's not really two. To follow a path of wisdom or action really leads to the same goal, the knowledge of Brahman. The knowledge of awareness, absolute. So, we begin. As the question is, what is this renunciation what you so speak of, and how is this relevant to everything that's saying? What am I renouncing? It seems very difficult to do. As you say, act. To act in the world, but then you're also saying that the sage, he's renouncing the world. How do I resolve this paradox? And as a listener, this is the paradox that we're resolving within ourselves, of the two opposing forces, action, wisdom, and to stabilize that in the central position. So this is what Krishna is helping with. Krishna is the central position here, as he stands at the middle of the two opposing forces, reins in his hand. The sense is controlled by the reins, and he's the guiding principle. Let's hear what he has to say. First, Arjuna asks him, you praise, O Krishna, the renunciation of action, and yet you tell me to act, to practice devotion. Tell me for certain, which of these two is better, devotion or renunciation? Krishna says, both renunciation and devotion lead to the highest good. But of the two, the performance of action, which action and devotion are synonymous here with the yoga, and he's being referred to, is that to have the unwaveringness of mind is a mental sacrifice. This is a renunciation, but it's devotion, an unwavering commitment for the highest good. And this is what purifies when one has and acts in the world. It's not just through action itself. Action without knowledge is meaningless. And this is further discussed in what true renunciation is. So, but of the two, action and renunciation, performance of action is superior to the renunciation of action. So, he's recommending here that to be in the world, to act, but is superior than to not act. But action with knowledge, and this will be later reified when we understand what the difference between knowledge and wisdom is. This is a lifelong study here. So I hope it comes through. I hope it's made a bit clear. I'll explain a bit further. So, why is this so? Why is action superior to renunciation of actions? And Krishna says, the renunciate, he neither hates, nor does he desire. And it may be known that as, so, the yogi of action, he neither hates, nor desires. He's not moving towards, away, or towards, the two opposing forces. He neither hates nor desires, and it may be known that he is constantly practicing renunciation. It means he's surrendering of the fruit. For he is free from the pairs of opposites, not bound by them. So mighty Arjuna, he says, he is easily freed from the bondage. The bondage is this simple pulling or pushing, if you're moving towards or away from something. He says it's like children, and not the wise, that speak of knowledge and the path of action as distinct. So, he who's firmly set on one reaches the end of both. Children here referred to as the ignorant. That the ignorant, they speak of two different paths as distinct. That you're either doing this or you're either doing that. You're either studying Buddha Dharma or you're studying what Krishna's saying. You're either studying meditation or you're studying non-meditation. It's either action or wisdom. And these opposing forces is what Krishna is saying is the stumbling block to bondage and sorrow. That yoga is equanimity. And the renunciate who is he who is neither moving towards or away from. He's free from the pairs of opposites and freed from the pairs of bondage. So the state of men, the quality of mind reached by this renunciation and moving beyond the pairs of opposites, it's not just acquired by renunciation of action, but through action as well, through devotion. And he sees that the way of renunciation and the way of action are truly the same thing. So one who sees that this paradox is reconciled, he truly sees. But the ignorant still sees two separate things. He sees two opposing forces. He sees Krishna saying to not act, and then he sees Krishna saying to act. And the ignorant will see two distinct things. What does he mean by this? And so you refer to in the last chapter of knowledge that the knowledge is to see the action in the inaction. This is the definition here of knowledge, the who is the doer. Nature is the doer. So by releasing the sense of an agency, of the sense of the doership, This frees one from the pairs of opposites, and that same renunciation that leads to the highest good and realization of that's the Satchitananda, of pure awareness itself, is actualized by both. And well, but renunciation of action, Arjuna, is hard to attain without actually acting. So the sage, he purifies himself through devotion with action, and he quickly reaches Brahman. So Brahman we refer to as pure consciousness, Satchitananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. I think for the remaining text I'm going to use the word consciousness because I'm trying to make it relevant and modern. But Brahman is the equivalent of Satchitananda, existence, consciousness, and bliss. But I'll just refer as pure consciousness. He renounces action, yet that's hard to do without actual action. He has to purify himself through devotion. And the action creates the bondage as well if he's attached to the fruit. So he says, he who is devoted to the yoga of action and is pure in mind, he has conquered his body and subdued his senses. It means he's established himself in self-control. And he's realized his self as the self of all beings. He is undefiled though he acts. So he's realized his self as pure consciousness. That is consciously taken birth, like what Krishna says, I've taken birth through my nature, veiled myself in the Maya of illusion, and I'm not really the doer. That same consciousness is the same one that resides within all beings, and the only thing that veils it is the Maya of illusion. And we see is that the self-controlled one, who is neither moving towards the pairs of opposites, he can actualize this knowledge where he sees that everyone is trapped or in bondage through holding on to themselves as the sense of doer, the sense of I. We see is that there's no outside to this pure consciousness. Remember, Brahman is the offering. This consciousness is the offering. The in-breath can be offered to the out-breath. The in-breath is Brahman. The out-breath is Brahman. The fire is Brahman. The offering being poured onto the fire is Brahman. The senses are consciousness. The objects of the senses are consciousness. The objects being offered into the self-control is pure consciousness. Everything has this taste of pure consciousness, pure awareness. And it's in seeing this that you see visual image. And really these colors, lights, and sounds are not out there. Same with the sound, you hear it, is out there. The taste is out there. These are all offerings. And all of the mental faculties that arise, that we associate with the sound, the light, and the images, this is the mental sacrifice. The pulling and the pushing of either moving towards or away from the object. Are the eyes moving towards the visual appearance, the ear moving towards the auditory sound, the taste moving, or the nose moving towards the olfactory, touch moving towards the tactile. says, the one who sees this, he sees the all in all. He recognizes that I do nothing at all. This is how the yogi thinks. The devotee, I am not doing anything at all. It's just happening, just spontaneous, just happens. And that is one who knows the truth. He knows the truth that he's not the agent. For in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling and tasting, and walking, breathing and sleeping, and speaking, emitting and seizing, grasping, and opening, closing of the eyes, he is assured that it is only the senses with their objects. It is the sense of the eyes associated with the movements, the taste, so grasping at desire, sexual fulfillment, grasping at an external object. So this is knowledge, like the true knowledge of the self is what happens and through this renunciation. So he who works without attachment, resigning his actions to pure consciousness, is untainted like a lotus. Now, like a lotus is born in the mud, but it's not stained by the mud. And only with the body, the mind, and the understanding, and the senses do the devotees act without an attachment. And they do this for the purification of the heart. And there's a joyful effort here in partaking this for the purification. Where you're like a lotus in the great ocean, and you can be that pure heart that shines into the world. But why is it that some are bound, some are liberated? A selfless man is one who has renounced the fruit of the action. And many of you, I'm repeating the same things over and over and over again because it's like the message is clear. It's letting go. It's not telling you to do more. And I hope this comes clear. It's the renunciation is the surrender. Through surrender of the grasping, you actually attain the state of love and equanimity, and joyfulness. That is your own nature. A selfless man has renounced the fruit of his actions, and he attains that peace, born of the steadfastness. So, this peace and the steadiness of mind it's not saying that it comes through working for it, you're trying to grasp at it. It comes through a letting go and a surrender of the grasping. A selfless man, that means he has surrendered the sense of an agency, the sense of the doership. It just happens. But the man who is not selfless, he's led by desire, and he's attached to the fruit, and he binds himself. So if there's no doership, who's to blame? And you see this within the ignorant or the childlike. They're always blaming somebody else. It's his fault. It's Joe Biden's fault. The president's fault. It's Kamala Harris's fault. It's their fault. See? It's like that. Always blaming somebody else. The one who sees, there's no blame there. So the embodied one, who is capable of embodying the sense of consciousness, he's subdued his senses. He's renounced the actions with a discerning mind. And he dwells happily in the city of 9 gates. The 9 gates being 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, the mouth, the sexual organ, and the rectum. This is the house, the city. In body one, he dwells happily in the city. And since he's released the sense of a doership, he's neither working, nor is he inciting various work to be done. Still, maintenance is done for the body. The sense of a doership has dissolved. His body is intelligent and capable of taking care of itself. So the ideas of a doer, of an actor, and an agent, this is the illusion of Maya, the quality of nature, and not taking ownership of one's nature. And if you're not in control, if you have not subjugated Maya, then it's you're at the whim of the illusion. Neither agency nor objects does the Supreme Spirit create for the world. So, you, as the Supreme Spirit, is saying it's not you creating the sense of I. It's a quality of nature. Neither agency nor objects does the Supreme Spirit create, nor does it bring about the union with the fruit of action. It's nature that does everything. And it's not you who unifies. You're already in union. Yeah, this is interesting. Because there is even a sense of a doer that says, I need to work hard to attain this goal, to be in union with my nature. And the striving, the force is still there. The two polarities still have not been brought into the central position. We'll continue. So, nor does the all-pervading spirit take on the sin or the merit of any. And he's not touched by it, like a lotus is not touched by the mud, but is grown and unblemished in the ocean of consciousness. The ocean is symbolic here of Brahman consciousness, pure consciousness. And knowledge, we say, is veiled in ignorance, and therefore the humans and mortals of this world are deluded. And no one else to blame, just not recognizing what is renunciation, and still grasping at the attachment. Even the attachment to, I have to unify this one day, to live a happy life. I'll do yoga one day. I'll centralize these two polarities one day. I'll get there. And even that becomes a stumbling block. Even that has to be let go and offered as a mental sacrifice. But for those in whom this ignorance is destroyed by the knowledge of reality, that knowledge, like the sun, reveals the Supreme. It's through this renunciation that this knowledge reveals itself, without the sense of the doership. Because one of the aspects of nature, right, is bodhi. This is the understanding that is naturally intelligent. It's wise. And we see this as the eyes blink, the walking happens, the breaths happen, and so on and so on and so on. So, the knowledge. How does one actualize this? This is where meditation becomes important in a way. Is that fixing their minds on the Supreme, and one with the Supreme. They abide in the Supreme. They realize the Supreme alone as the supreme goal. They reach that state from which there is no return, their sins having destroyed by their knowledge. So, through resting in pure consciousness, they reside at one in this consciousness, inseparable from this consciousness, abiding in it, resting in it. They realize alone that is all that is, with no doership, seeing the nature as just change, just this changing, changing. Nothing out there to harm you. Once who recognize this, they reach a state in which there's nothing to move back to, where there is no doer to move to, no sense of a doership to move from. They become free. And then that opens up the world as a place of bliss. The world becomes a place that can be enjoyed, because the attachments and the aversions are now dissolved in the fire of knowledge. So the wise see this, and you can see it within them, the qualities of the wise, the sages who see, and those who reside in pure consciousness. They're endowed with learning. They're endowed with the humility of spirit. They don't have to brag about what they know. They carry it in their demeanor. They can see it in their eyes, because the eyes are connected with the heart. And they're equal. They're equal to a cow, to an elephant, a dog, or an outcast, because they see the same spirit residing within all. Just some recognize it and some don't. So he holds all equally. So those who see, they have the quality of compassion. They see all beings within themselves, and the self being the supreme spirit. And consciousness reigns. Those yogis who see, they set their mind on equality, and they come here for the purpose of overcoming these rounds of birth and death. They see others traveling on this pair of opposites, moving to and from, away and for, and they're on the wheel. Pure consciousness, as Brahman, as is translated, is unstained like the lotus, and is the same in all directions, which you see in depictions of Brahman. He has 4 heads, which means he's directionless. He's in all directions. As Brahman's pure consciousness is not in a location, is neither inside nor outside, as the nature of the sky. And therefore, Brahman, like the sky, rests, like all the elements resting in space. So he who knows this pure consciousness established in it, he's not deluded. He is undiluted, and his mind is stable. He neither rejoices when experiencing pleasure, nor is he distressed when experiencing pain. He's equal in the pairs of opposites. And notice I'm saying this again and again and again. You can listen to an hour, but I'm speaking of equanimity. In just many interpretations of the same thing, again and again and again, of the equal mind, of how much are we grasping. Letting go his heart, being unattached to the outer objects, he means that the senses have surrendered its attachment, its fruit. The sense of sight has surrendered its attachment to the visual appearance. The sense of taste has surrendered its attachment to the tongue and the taste. The ears have surrendered their attachment to the sound. The nose has surrendered its attachment to smell. The taste is surrendering its attachment to the skin, and resting in the state of all of these is consciousness, all consciousness. And like the light of the eyes, the extension is the heart, and flows from the heart. And that same Brahman, which is equal to the Absolute, inseparable from Krishna. Because Krishna is the embodiment of Brahman. He's equal. He's taken his stance as I'm equal with Brahman. There's no separation anymore. He finds the joy in that self. And his heart is devoted always to this contemplation, where he immerses deeper and deeper into it. And he enjoys this undying bliss, the eternal, everlasting bliss, because if there's nothing separate from him anymore, it means there's no pain out there. What arises then? We call it bliss, but even the name you may hold ideas about. And bliss, what's that? How do I get some of that? And it becomes another attachment. It's just consciousness. Consciousness, existence, bliss. Satchidananda. Satchidananda. Satchidananda Brahman. For the enjoyments that arise from the contacts with the objects of the senses, they're only sources of pain for the wise. They don't have a delight in them. They change. They have a beginning and they have an end. So Arjuna's advice, or Krishna's advice to Arjuna, he says, "O son of Kunti," and the wise don't find delight in them. Let them go. Lost in anger, they're foes of the man who sees clearly, as they steer one's mind away like the ship steered by the wind. He is not able to withstand the forces of lust and anger. Even here and hereafter he quits his body. But the yogi sees. He sees this, and he's not pulled by lust and anger. He's not pulled by the emotions of jealousy, pride, and desire. He's a happy man, resting equally in the city of 9 gates. Remember, the body. The body is his temple. It is his city, and he is the Lord, residing in the heart of all. So the kind of yogi, the devotee that recognizes his equality with Brahman, pure consciousness, existence, bliss. He is happy within, he's happy without. He rejoices within, he rejoices without. All is bliss. He enjoys. He learns to finally enjoy life. And he is illumined within, he is illumined without. He attains the freedom of Brahman, himself becoming one with Brahman. No, ponder that. He's become one. He's not associated with two. Because associated with two is I'm here, Brahman is there, pure consciousness is there, something to attain one day. You have the sense of an agent. And we've identified that the one of knowledge has released the sense of an agency, the sense of a doer, for he cannot find the sense of a doer. It's his nature that is doing. And with these obscurations destroyed, his doubts are dissolved. They're dispelled. The senses have now become control, and he devotes himself for the benefit of all beings through compassion, for he sees all beings within himself. And the sages, the ones who see, they attain that freedom in recognition of pure Brahman, existence, consciousness, and bliss. They rejoice in that. They take refuge in that. That's refuge. And it has your back because the quality of your nature as Brahman is that it is wise. Which means like a mother who loves her children. It's wise. And for the good mothers out there, mothers love their children. A good mother has your back. So those who are free from this lust and this anger, they've subdued their minds. They've realized their self as equal with existence, consciousness, and bliss. It means to even step here, if you've gone this far, to recognize your equality with Brahman, to surrender the sense of a doership, that means you must have already established now the sense of worthiness, that you have to be worthy to be that. And this is what is actually meant by an Aryan. An Aryan means the noble one. The noble ones are worthy. They hold themselves high as being equal with the world, the whole world and themselves. Know that since this quality exists within all beings, it's a matter of recognition. And for those who are listening, let me reaffirm to you, you are worthy. You are worthy. You are worthy of that recognition, of equality with existence, consciousness, and bliss. You are worthy of that enjoyment of pure bliss. You are worthy of that enjoyment of all the enjoyments of life, of pure bliss, absolute. So the wise, they shut out the external objects. They're focused within themselves, steadfast in the mind. This is how they recognize Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss as the absolute. They shut out the external objects. They fix their gaze, which means the eyes are associated with the energy. If your eyes are wandering, then means that your energy is wandering in all directions. The eyes are fixed. And this is Krishna's instruction that he's giving on meditation. How do you meditate? Listen, you want to know how to meditate? He's giving the clear instruction right now for the meditators and the yogis. Release the external objects of the senses. That means the eyes, release the objects to the sight. The ears, release the objects to the sound. The tongue, release the object to the taste. The nose, release the objects to the sense. The skin, release the objects of touch. Okay? Fix the gaze. Stabilize there. Stabilize your energy. When it says stabilized, equalizing the in-breath and the out-breath, establishing a rhythm. Breathing in through his nostrils, he controls the senses. He stabilizes his mind. Stabilizes the understanding and intelligence, and resides equally in the city of 9 gates. He is ever bent, setting his mind on the highest good of liberation. It means freeing oneself from the pairs of opposites, of moving towards or away from the senses. Since you've withdrawn it in with yourself, remember the analogy we gave is like of a tortoise that draws its limbs in. Draw the limbs in like a tortoise, and reside equally in the city of 9 gates, equalizing the outward and the inward breaths through the nostrils, controlling his senses, mind, and understanding, intent on liberation, and ridding himself of desire, fear, anger. That man who contemplates in this way, he is freed. He is free. He has freed himself from the bonds and the pairs of opposites. For now he rests in that realization, intent on liberation. So, what do you realize in this state? So, having known me, after sitting this, or after taking this stance, this mudra, this gesture, you can know me as the dispenser of all sacrifice and austerities. This means that the giver of all good, the giver of purity. You can know me as the great Lord of all the worlds. This means that all the worlds exist within him. All the sacrifices exist within the Supreme. All of the austerities. You can see me, says Krishna, speaking as the Absolute, the one who recognizes himself as worthy of being equal with Brahman. He sees that he is the friend of all beings, and all beings are within himself. Compassion naturally arises. You no longer need to work on developing compassion. Compassion naturally arises out of love from this realization. And finally, he attains peace. Peace of mind. It's finally his, and he can enjoy. Thus ends the way of renunciation, the way the yogi renounces. the essence of all the scriptures, the essence of all Dharma. And I would even say the essence of even the Buddha Dharma, because he's saying the same thing of what the Buddha meant by the middle way, the middle path, of drawing in towards the middle path of the central position. Krishna's story of being in the battlefield of the two opposing armies is a symbolic representation of a timeless story of the here and the now. Those two armies, they're within you. Kurukshetra is your own mind. Okay? Your body is the chariot. The senses are the horses. The reins are your mind. Okay? The charioteer is the awakened mind, Supreme Brahman. It guides you, intelligent. So, this ends chapter of Renunciation. I'll see you in chapter 6, the way of meditation.